Bill Nelson is clearly a sore loser. He can't stand the fact that he's not going to be elected for, what, the first time in decades, and he won't. He's just here to steal this election. That's what he's done.
That was Florida Governor Rick Scott claiming once again, without evidence, of fraud in the state's U.S. Senate race. The Florida recount situation is clearly a huge mess. Ensuring that the final results are trusted by the voters of the Sunshine State, it's going to require extraordinary leadership. Unfortunately, the person in charge of the state, Governor Scott, has already failed at that, and failed miserably. Scott may be ahead in the vote count for his Senate race, but he's clearly more concerned with getting a new job than behaving in a dignified, respectable, and decent manner. His evasion for his own political interests is kind of reminding me of when he was on our show. I think it was 2 years ago. Take a look.
Would you tell your friend Donald Trump that he should walk back his statements that Muslims, that Islam hates America, that Islam hates us? Do you think Muslims in the state of Florida hate America?
Well, as you know, in Florida, we're the best melting pot in the world. We love everybody coming to our state.
I'm just asking generally, do you think that Muslims hate Americans, that Islam hates America, as Donald Trump said last night?
Well, I can tell you what's going on in Florida. We're at almost 45-year-old crime rate.
No, I don't.
So in our state, we're heading in the right direction.
I want to know. I want to know what's going on in your head, Governor. We're friends. I want you to answer the question. Do you personally think that Islam is a religion that hates America?
So, Joe, what I can tell you in our state is we have a lot of Muslims that live in our state.
Wrap it.
We've got Donald Trump, you know, he can talk about what the things he wants to talk about. Marco Rubio can, Ted Cruz, John Kasich.
No. Can you answer the question, or should we scoot?
Well, I can tell you that, you know, I'm glad everybody's in Florida.
Governor Rick Scott, thanks for being on. We will move on now. Thanks. So he scooted. Scott is making unsubstantiated charges of fraud in this election. He's filing lawsuits. And despite a small lead of roughly 12,000 votes out of over 8 million cast, he is childishly urging the Democratic incumbent Bill Nelson to simply step aside before the votes are counted. In short, Scott is trying to undermine the legitimacy of the election for himself. Rather than recusing himself from the process, Rick Scott is acting as political, as peevish, and as reckless as his friend Donald Trump. This recount is a political nightmare. Rick Scott apparently cares more about himself than the state he is supposed to lead. Joe, this guy, I don't understand why he is copying this president's behavior.
I don't either. I really don't. I mean, because if he only talked to the people that know the state of Florida the best, he would know. The odds are he's going to win this thing, and probably going to end up winning it even after the machine counts, the hand recounts. Yeah, I mean, I don't think Bill Nelson's going to pick up 12,000, 13,000 votes. Nobody believes that, and yet he's willing to accuse a guy that's represented the state of Florida of committing a criminal act, of trying to, quote, steal the election, when Rick Scott's own monitors and the law enforcement officers in Rick Scott's own state say that's not true. And yet he keeps, it went back on Fox and Friends this morning, continuing to lie. He's lying every day. These are lies. There's no basis in fact. There's no basis in truth. These are just plain, simple lies. And those lies will follow Rick Scott to the United States Senate for the next 6 years. And they're just so absolutely distressing, just like it was distressing that Marco Rubio, because people found a box of pencils and stickers and erasers, started talking about a grand conspiracy theory. That was just absolutely stupid. It was deplorable. But you know what, Mika? It's just where we are. And of course, here's Donald Trump just tweeting, quote, the Florida election should be called in favor of Rick Scott and Ron DeSantis.
It's kind of all you need to know.
And that large numbers of new ballots showed up out of nowhere and many ballots are missing or forged. He's just, you know what? We're not going to read.
Take it down.
Just take it down.
What a joke.
What a liar. What a liar. He's lying. He's lied about Arizona. He's lying about Florida. And again, the crazy thing is Republicans are going to end up winning Florida, and he's still lying about it. And Rick Scott, just like you saw in that clip from 2 years ago, will not stand up to Donald Trump, will not show the character that we used to expect from United States senators and we used to expect from governors in the state of Florida. I will say it one more time. If you are a Republican, if you are an office holder, let those with ears hear. Trumpism was voted down in the most extraordinary and dramatic way anytime since Watergate. It failed. And you Republicans had the biggest structural advantage that you've had in a very long time, and it will be a bigger structural advantage than you will have probably for decades to come. And you still lost, and you may pick up a couple of seats in the United States Senate when you really should have picked up 5 or 6. Trumpism fails. Lying catches up to politicians. Racism catches up to Arizona. Do you think it's a coincidence that you lost Nevada and Arizona? 2 states with some of the largest Hispanic populations growing by the day, after Donald Trump calls all Hispanics breeders and makes up the lies about Hispanics coming from Central America and bringing leprosy and smallpox? Actions have consequences. Rick Scott's words this week, this morning, will follow him around for the rest of his political career. Wake up. And you know what? Start using the values and the political wisdom that you used and you showed before Donald Trump came on stage in American politics, because rest assured, he will not stay on that stage longer past 2020.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.